Now, the greatest idea of all time. Stay tuned for
From the Trenches of Hollywood.
Here are your guru guides from the A-list to the D and everything in between. It's Ted and Craig.
All right, thank you. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the From the Trenches of Hollywood. I'm Craig. This is my co-host, Ted.
How you doing, everybody? Welcome to our first episode. It's exciting. We got a black screen. We got a black screen because we don't know what we're doing quite yet with the background, but it's going to be awesome. So, what are we doing here? What's our take on all this, Craig? What are we doing?
So, folks, thanks for joining us. First off, Ted and I were having a discussion about our experiences as in the creative fields and what we've been through, our successes, our failures, what we've learned, our takeaways, and we both have a unique experience. And we thought, hey, it'd be pretty interesting to share this with all you, because maybe you can avoid some of these pitfalls that we've fallen into
and gotten out of. Yeah. It's good stuff.
So that's what brings us here.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a good way to view things, experiences both in your field and in mine. Whether it was architecture years ago, and now it's in writing, and that's our mainstay now, writing and developing art, for different books and that thing. From my standpoint, why don't you tell everybody about you? What was your background?
So,
or what is your background?
Yeah. Well, look, I've always been a creator as long back as I can remember. Started acting as a kid. I started writing and producing theater as a teen into my 20s. Then I realized I wanted to make movies, so I went to Hollywood, because when I was 20, that's where you had to go to make movies. So it was a time of transition. We were still shooting on film. We were still cutting on a flatbed, cutting film work prints. The Avid digital technology was just starting to come into its own. So I started writing, I started producing, started directing, and I have been at it now for 30 years.
It's a long time.
Right.
3 decades. Yep.
So Hollywood is where I landed, and I still am in Southern California, and currently I'm working in film and television. For the most part, I've dabbled in a handful of other things. I've written for some publications. I've written short stories. I haven't attempted a novel. I see that possibly in my future, but who knows? But along the way, look, I've dealt with a lot of different individuals and demands and wish lists and you name it, to try and get something done. But so I don't know. I might have a little insight, maybe some, and love to share it with you.
Yeah, I think that you do. I think you've got a very unique perspective that will help a lot of people, like we talked about, from the dining room table, the idea to the dining room table, to write it, to get it to the point where they're feeling comfortable enough to present it to the world, and that's,
I think these lessons that we're going to talk about apply to all kinds of different creative fields, because it all starts with arranging words on a page. You're painting your impressions, so to say. And these impressions, these ideas, they're yours and yours alone. And getting them down on the page sometimes is the hardest thing for someone to do. And maybe we can help start that journey.
Yeah. And even you and I have times where we're like that, not necessarily writer's block, but it's just getting it worked out. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Even with the experiences that we've had that are somewhat similar and somewhat different. I mean,
yes. Well, tell everyone about yours. Your background is, I've come from this theater, film, television, entertainment type background for the most part. You whole another field
avenue.
So fill everybody in.
Still creative side. Still the creative side. My background is in architecture. I was trained as an architect. in college, and I was trained also as a an artist. I guess I was always an artist. That was something my father was, and everybody that knows my background knows my father and knows his background in the car design business and that. So it's always been kind of a mainstay. There's always been crayons. There's always been pencils. Growing up as a kid, paints, that kind of thing. So having that and then developing and going to school in architecture and doing that and learning as far as structure goes. Structure is really important, whether it's whether you're writing or whether you're building a home. Structure is everything, right? And you have to have
Sure.
the proper foundation and the proper specifications so that you meet codes, if you want to call it that, to build a safe home. Same thing goes with writing, and it actually is very similar in a lot of respects. As an artist, I kind of, you got the sheet to work with, and you're thinking outside the box all the time. You try to anyway. It's very hard. But in architecture, you also try to think outside the box. I think that you somewhat achieve that eventually, but you're building a story, not literally a one story, two stories through, but you're building a story of the home, of where people are going to live. Same thing goes with characters and that kind of thing. So it kind of melted for me. It was kind of a very simple thing. I've always been a storyteller, and I'm sure you have that too. You've always been a storyteller. I just did it in building versus on paper. So mine now, now in the 7 or 8 years that I've been writing, really writing, before I got published in that, I really it was a good foundation, like I said, to learn that aspect, I think, of myself, because as a creative, I wanted to take chances, and I think that that's important. You really have to have that kind of that drive, and it's scary. It's absolutely scary it's like breaking ground when you're doing doing a house. It's scary. You've got to make sure that thing's safe. It's not
Yeah.
built on shifting sand, and with writing, you kind of have a little bit of a I found a lot of similarities in architecture and in writing, but with structure. And that's one of the things about you that I really appreciate, because you have a certain architecture, if you want to call it that. You build story different than I do, and say in a novel or a novella setting. You have another script setting and that's been awesome. It's been awesome for me to really, just watch and just learn. And that's where I come from. That's where I'm at, just at the beginning of some great things that are happening. And you brought me to that point too as well. But that's my background. So I mean, architecture is a great thing, but I've always been a storyteller, and this is I've really, I think, the successes I've had, just as the last few years. I think it's showing that I should have done this years ago, and so there's no time like the present. Strike, all the cliches, strike while the iron's hot, all that stuff. But you need to, if you've got that story and it's nagging at you to write it down, then get it down. You're getting inspired, do it. So anyway, that's my background. So that's where I'm heading. So
Well, that's your background. What are you doing right now, though? I mean,
well,
you're creating. You went from buildings to now stories and comics.
we've got Retrieve that we're working on right now. Retrieve Comic Books has been the Retrieve series has been excellent. It's been very well received, as you know, very well. Grim 101's doing very, very well as well. The dark comedy that I've written, they're both they both are two different avenues. They're both storytelling. One's sci-fi thriller. One's a very dark comedy that's has a romance esque gothic side to it. Completely different, which I think is good. Um, and one's a comic book. One is an illustrated novella. So it's a they're very similar in some respects, but not in others. So, but yeah, I've got a lot going on with that. We've got just a learning the diversification of building uh, building your fan base and building the idea of not just building it online, but also getting it published so that other people will read it, so that the potential of the full encompassing world of it all can be presented to certain peoples. You know what I mean? It's a very tricky thing. very fascinating. The marketing side of it's very fascinating. But
Uh,
anyway, so I
so
digress. But
marketing,
that's
creative
yeah,
side, on the other
yeah,
hand, as we're here to talk about, really, there's so many similarities
mm,
in all of it. Quite honestly, there's different approaches, but I feel really the end result is to tell a story, and you want to invoke some kind of emotional response in that story that you're telling. If it's a painting, a sketch,
hmm,
a short film, a novel, an article in a magazine,
sure,
whatever it is that you're putting together, there is a methodology that
hmm,
you're going to employ. Not everyone's going to do it the same way.
right,
There is no one way to do it. It's everyone's waiting or looking for that uh, reaction at the end, the payoff.
yeah,
Honestly, as the
yeah,
storyteller, there's a reason you're telling this story. You
yeah.
want it to uh, to be passed on. It's history or an impression
Very good
or
point.
a just encapsulating this moment in time and whatever it is that you're trying to reflect in what you do. So it's think of it that way. Everything that you write and everything that you create is a piece of the archives, a piece of the
Yeah,
future, um, a,
yeah, it
a,
is.
a,
It's a legacy in one respect, in a way. But yeah,
a way
it's
to
an.
look.
Do you think we're an inspiration? We're in their inspiration business, possibly. I mean, what do you feel
Well,
in that?
that really depends. I wouldn't
Hmm.
necessarily say everyone. Well, yeah, that's not true. You're trying to inspire or invoke reaction. So
Yeah, yeah,
whatever that is, it is. Whether it's a positive, a negative, whatever you're looking for, or whatever actually the receiver
hmm,
of the piece, it's their own self. It's their independent reaction. It's
yeah.
their
Interpretation to it.
interpretation.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
So it's but again, they all are very similar, very connected
Hmm,
in a in a way that you go through a process, whether you're painting or you're writing or you're composing a photograph. Even
hmm,
sometimes
hmm.
there's a process that you're going to go through, and so for us, we're all about the written word for the most part.
Yeah,
And I hope that folks in the future, we're going to bring on some guests that are going to dabble into some other areas as well. And who knows, maybe we will bring in some photographers and we'll move
yeah,
on to that. But right now, we want to inspire people to take that idea that they have and get it down on paper and or whatever medium you're working in, but
hmm,
get it down and work it and get it to where you are happy with it. If that ever happens,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
never a
True.
final draft.
Yeah,
There's
right.
always a note, um, but getting it down. So I think that's one of the goals we have here on this
Yeah,
show.
absolutely, absolutely. When you and I first talked, that was the whole idea. We've got a planet full of people that might not have a book in them, but they have a story. And that was something that you and I both talked about. We said, you know what, that would be really cool to get a podcast together that we could actually show maybe some inside scoops to how Hollywood works a little bit, maybe how independent publishing works in my neck of the woods, and we can
So
figure out
I gotta disagree with what you just said there, though,
what's
that
that?
not everybody may have a book in them, and I disagree. I know that everyone
No?
has a movie script in them because
Ah, okay.
I get pitched movie
All the
script
time.
ideas from everybody in my life. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. My
Every
mom pitches
party,
me.
yeah, I'm sure.
It doesn't matter
Yeah.
if they find out that you are in the movie business. This idea that they've been carrying around for decades
Mhm.
comes to life before your very eyes right there.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're great, sometimes they're annoying,
Mhm.
sometimes they are just dreadful, but you can't tell them that. And so the safe thing is just give them your email and
Yeah.
let them send you a draft to read. I'm not
Curate it.
discouraging
Yeah.
anyone. I
Oh,
want to
sure, sure.
encourage people, but the point being here is everyone does have this little bit of something inside of them, a little bit of storytelling inside of them, a little tiny bit, and
Hmm.
it comes out in many different ways. Sometimes, if it's just reading a book to their kid, uh, you see that little spark in them. Now, they
Sure.
might not have put those words on that page, but they know how to bring them to life. Why? Because of good writing.
That's true. Very true. All right. Good point. Good point. Well taken. Well taken.
Northern Grounds Coffee. Fresh, artisan roasted, small batch coffee with pop culture flair. The finest organic suspension ever devised. From the trenches of Hollywood come the creatives of tomorrow and a hefty dry cleaning bill. Now your hosts, Ted and Craig.
Dive too deep into our next segment here, I did want to talk about the just the different types of creatives out there that may be struggling to try and identify exactly what it is they're trying to achieve, because they've just got this idea, but they don't know what is it? Is it a book? Is it a movie? Is it a short story? Is this an article for Reader's Digest? Um, what is this?
Yeah.
And I hope that this is another thing that we can help people tackle
Hmm.
through this show in the coming episodes. And look, we're wide open to questions. I think you can see
Absolutely.
our contact at the bottom.
Yep.
Feel
Sure.
free, send in your questions. Be happy to hear from you, and be happy to answer your questions too. So at Hollywood Trenches, you see it on the bottom of the screen there.
Hmm.
Be sure, or you see me at Craig Hollywood at Twitter, TedDaviesArtistry.com.
Yep. You contact us on any of those.
Send your questions over.
Yep. And follow us on Instagram. That'll be a good starting point. And then that would be great. And we'll start working with that for contact point for everybody.
Yeah, sounds great. And also, just wanted to give a great shout out to our sponsor, Northern Grounds. Fresh artisan roasted small batch coffee with pop culture flair, the finest organic suspension ever devised. Thanks a lot, Northern Grounds. You can find them online, right? You can order
Absolutely.
online.
Yep. Absolutely.
Northerngrounds.com, I believe.
Correct. Yep.
So
And
we'll
they'll be
make sure.
and they'll be giving us a promo code soon that'll help people when they're shopping. So you guys tune in for that. So you'll save a couple pennies on with the promo code on the next show, I'm sure.
And the
So
coffee's great. I
it
have
is.
sampled 3 of their brews, and yeah, it's making. I need an espresso right now. So
All right.
let's move on, because I can't
Yep.
go get that right now. What I do want to talk about, though, is I kind of touched on it a minute ago, but what
Mhm.
I would like to get people thinking about in this episode is exactly that. You know, what kind of writer are they? What do they see themselves as, if anything at all?
Mhm.
Like, if you're a writer, you're a writer. You know what a writer is? A writer is someone who writes. So keep writing, and you're a writer. So don't question that in yourself at all. If you have an idea and you're stopped and you're stuck, and you're a writer, sit
Mhm.
down and write, and you're a writer. Put
And
down
own it.
everything you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Own it. Yep. Own it. And be proud of it.
So kinds of writers. I mean, it's huge. It's
Mhm.
broad, right?
Oh
We've got
God. I mean, there's 2 different types of writers right here. I mean, we're both storytellers, but you're by far a better script writer than I am. And I don't like pigeonholing people either. But I think that's a good goal. To find out where you start from is a good thing. So
yeah.
I mean,
It's
I would
such.
consider myself a book writer. An author. I would consider myself. So what about you? What would you start yourself out as?
So I started as a playwright.
Right.
And that was my thing. I was acting at the time, and I started writing plays. So you've got
Hmm.
playwrights. I moved into screenplays, similar but different.
Hmm.
Uh, You know, they are a different beast. Um, More differences than similarities, quite honestly. Same with a teleplay for a series, as well as it's a bit different than for the big screen.
Okay.
Slight differences,
Yeah.
basically in jargon, technology
Hmm.
used in positions and things like this. Uh, I then started writing for some periodicals in Southern California for Southern California Publishing.
Cool.
Everything from reviews to opinion pieces.
Hmm.
I had a column for a Heartbeat called Redneck and Redlands. And
It's a great
Redlands,
title. Yeah.
yeah, so Redlands is a small community
Hmm.
in Riverside County, I believe it is, or is it San Bernardino County? It's right. It's right there on the line. I think it's San Bernardino County, um, just outside of LA, to the east, about an hour or
Hmm.
so. And my family lives in the area, and I started contributing to a weekly called the Inland Empire Weekly. The weekly, how about that?
Cool.
Um, they have them all over. There's the Orange County Weekly, the LA Weekly, and it's just
Hmm.
full of pop culture and schedules for theater events, movies, and concerts, and just the
Yeah.
social life of the area. So I started writing for that piece and created Redneck from Redlands to give my 2 cents as a white boy in Redlands, California,
Yeah.
from a transplant from Indiana. So I grew up in
Yeah.
Indiana,
Sure.
and made my way out here 30 years ago. But
Right.
so look, there's the columns, there's the opinion writer,
There's
there
short story
is
writers. I mean, there's, you name it. I mean, and you
there
guys can
there are.
even add that in the questions too. Tell us what kind of writer you are, when you do submit a question. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
I was going to say there's non-creative writing as well. So not that we're trying to lump you into this as
Sure.
well. The process is completely different. Um, but we're sticking to creative writing. That's what this is all about: creativity,
Hmm.
and the creative field. So yeah, you think about it, guys. What kind of writer are you? What kind of project are you trying to work on right now? What are you struggling with? Let us know. Maybe we or someone in our community
Hmm.
has the answer for you. We'll be happy to pass it along. If we can't personally help you out, we are part of a huge community. That's one of the things
Hmm.
coming from the film world is, a lot of times writers feel so isolated because it
Hmm.
is a very isolated thing. You have to have the discipline to put yourself down and get the work done.
Yeah.
And oftentimes it is alone.
Hmm.
And more than not, I mean, honestly, it's unless you're a part of a writing team and
Hmm.
like on a television series or something, which I've been, that's always a lot of fun in a writer's room. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to take all those ideas and put them down. And that doesn't happen as a group project.
Sure.
Somebody ends up
Yeah.
doing that.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
But it's a solitary thing. But I learned in the movie world that it doesn't have to be, because it takes an army to make a movie.
Sure.
I could have up to 100 people working on a film with me, and they all have ideas on the script. Trust me, you don't always want to take them, but you realize that that kind of interest and support and potential collaboration is all around you.
Yeah.
It's all around you, and I think it's the same way for someone who's working on a novel. Uh, Not that you want everyone to read it before it's ready, but I think that there's enough community support out
Yeah.
there
Beta
to help.
readers. I mean, yeah, people that you trust. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, there are groups out there to
Sure.
join. I don't want to push any particular social media organization, but I know that
Hmm.
throughout them there are different types of groups you can get on and meet up with like-minded writers like yourself
Hmm.
and discuss some of these things. And don't be afraid to do it. Don't be embarrassed of your ideas. Don't be shy.
That's very important. Don't be embarrassed, and don't be to the point where you're you're double checking yourself all the time. You're going to have to, that parachute will open once you jump off that cliff. You have to make sure that you understand that you might get scuffed up a bit on the rocks, but the parachute will open. So just, you've got to trust yourself enough that you've gotten this far and you've got that ink down on that page or on the
Yeah.
computer, whatever it is, you know.
Well, remember this: the parachute might not always open the first time,
Yeah,
But
that's true. That's true.
writers are resilient. You'll bounce off the ground and you'll jump again. And one of those days it will open for you and it will be great. But it's a process and it is work.
Hmm.
It's a commitment and it is one of the greatest things ever.
Yeah,
The feeling you get when you're creating and you see those things come to life in front of you.
it's an amazing feeling. Absolutely. I agree with you 100% on that. Absolutely. And it's a lot bigger than who you are. And that's
So, like,
something too, keep that in mind.
yeah,
What's that? What were you saying?
I was just gonna say that we're just eating up our time here chatting
Yeah,
away.
I know.
I wanted to. I know that we've given her. Look, we wanted to make this episode about a little bit of an introduction of who
Mhm.
we are, and we can go into a little bit more of some of our in-depth experiences next time. But we'd really like to hear from you and
Yeah,
find out what
absolutely.
kind of writers you aspire to be. What kind of field you are interested in getting your work uh, placed, whether
Mhm.
it's published or produced, or printed, or whatever it is.
Yep.
Be interested to know and happy to assist in any way we can.
Northern Grounds Coffee. Fresh, artisan roasted small batch coffee with pop culture flair. The finest organic suspension ever devised. Now your hosts, Ted and Craig.
I want to, I want you to maybe give us a little bit of a story on when you left architecture. Did you have the idea of being a comic, or just were stories in your mind, or were pictures in your mind first? How did it
Pictures first.
evolve for you?
Pictures first. Always pictures first. I'll draw out a scene first before I write. And it's just the visual, this part of how I am. I remember things by pictures. I'll remember full stories because of one picture. You know, they say a picture, what's the word? What's the saying? The picture
Worth a thousand
yeah,
words,
worth a
right?
thousand words, right? So, and that's very true. I think that, but I don't, once you're a storyteller, you're always a storyteller. You can't really get around it. And whether you're drawing or whether, I mean, the cave paintings, I go back to a lot of that where they were storytellers in the most primitive form, and even whether it's architectural prints or it's comic books or whatever, you're in that zone and you're still a storyteller. But as far as that's concerned, yeah, in architecture, it was different when I was leaving because there was a lot of there was property development and there's a lot of sections of architecture that get kind of boring, and it's a lot of paperwork and all that junk. So when you look at it from a standpoint of, man, I'm doing something creative and I'm inspiring people and I'm doing, you get yourself, it's almost like you're reborn. It's such a weird thing. It sounds corny, but that's the way it felt. And it's not, it hasn't stopped. So, but it is scary. It was really scary. I was like, oh God, what am I going to do? Am I going to be able to do this?
Let me ask you this: back to the architecture days, when
Mm,
you would have a project, say like a new build from the
yeah.
ground up,
Yep.
would you conceptualize the exterior first or the interior?
Always interior. I was always, I was trained.
Really, that's so different than I would think. I would think you picture this giant building, and then we're going
No,
to fill it. We're going to
I
fill it
would,
with what we want.
I'm very much a student of Frank Lloyd Wright in a lot of regards. And for organic architecture, always starts, it's like a tree from the inside out. And I think that once you get to the site and you really see what's going on around you, then that's how it's put in. And it's weird because in stories, I know the beginning and I know the end, and I'm working the opposite way. I'm almost working from the bookends inside, versus in the architecture, what's inside out. It's a really weird thing. But yeah, I can see a certain. It's still a story. I mean, period. Whether it's on a site, a beautiful site, or if it's on a city lot, it's the same. Whether you're doing comic books or a full, novel, it's the same. It's just getting it down and making sure that you can get the structure in place. But yeah, it was a real. It wasn't really. It was scary, but it wasn't like I was determined. It was it. I was going to set a date. I knew I was going to I knew I was going to get it done. And not every story got produced. I mean, there's been stories that I'm still writing. I didn't think it was ready yet. I thought it was ready, but it wasn't ready yet. I'm still writing some of them, but the ones that I wanted to get out are out. So, but yeah, I mean, architecture's good, but I mean, it was a great career. But yeah, it's sometimes you have to put things aside to get to what you want to do. You know what I mean? You understand that. I think everybody kind of understands that a little bit.
Sure, I think that most people have a desire to do something that's creative,
Yeah.
but have been talked down or out of the possibility at some point in their life, and it just stuck with them.
Yeah.
And you always hear the story of the starving artist and
Sure.
how
Sure.
difficult it is to make it in this or that. And well, I will say this: it is difficult to make it, and it's extremely difficult to be the best, the
Yeah.
top of the game, or the
Yeah.
most celebrated, or the most famous.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the most famous isn't always the best.
No.
And fortunately, that's just the way that it is. Of course, best is subjective. My best is not someone else's best, but
Sure.
and I acknowledge that. However, come on, we gotta be real. There's some of these people
Yeah.
who make ridiculous amounts of money
Yeah.
to write just dreadful things.
Yeah.
So
Reboots. Sorry.
yeah,
Reboot or after reboot. Yeah. Yeah. Some of them,
I
not
don't
all of them.
I don't
Some are.
want to name names, but there are folks who take ridiculous checks in Hollywood
Mhm.
to pretend like they're creating something new, and they're just yeah, no, it's just dreadful. Look, when you see an actor and they perform and they are amazing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're great. They're great. And then you see them in something else and you're like, what did that is
Why?
two
Yeah.
things:
Why they do
bad
it? Yeah.
writing, bad directing.
Mhm.
They know how to act, but they're reading horrible words to a director who's more interested in the shot than the performance.
Yeah.
Listen, let me get off my horse here. Sorry.
Mhm. No, it's good, man.
Little side opinion there.
You
However,
need.
is happens all the time, all the time, all the time. So you can't get frustrated, and you aim high, but there are a ridiculous amount of working writers
Yeah.
who are not winning awards every day, or
Mhm.
not don't have the highest grossing movie, or are not on the bestseller list, or not on the. It's great to attain, to try and attain those heights in your career,
Yeah.
strive, but let's be real that there's a whole lot more to life.
Yeah, there is. And and that might lead into a segue too. We talked about what kind of writer you are. What are your goals? I mean, what's your passion wanting? What do you just want to make enough to feed your family, which is awesome. That's great. There's nothing wrong with that. Very honorable. Is it enough to maybe take a trip with every year? Or are you going to do this full time? I mean, is it what's your draw? What excites you about this to where are you all
Simple,
in, or are you just doing it on the weekend, which is okay too.
simple
So
world domination. That's
so
all I'm after.
that's
That's
right.
it.
Muhaha. Yep.
All right. Well, folks, look, you got the address down there. Please reach out to us. It's time for us to get out of here.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I got to go right.
Yeah. I do
Um,
too. I got a lot going on right now. Everything's happening. So good stuff though.
So
Good
do
stuff.
I. I got several projects. We'll talk about them next time.
Yep.
Join us again, and we will talk about what we're working on right now.
hmm
And hopefully, we will be talking or addressing some of your questions, comments, and we look forward to receiving them. Follow us on social media. We'll put that all up here at the end of the show. In fact, I'm not entirely sure what it all is just yet, because we are just getting started, like we said.
Yep.
Uh, thanks for joining us. Show one here is a nice run through.
Yeah.
Ted, all right.
Just to get just a great. This has been great. Just to get a
We're
nice
not
little taste. What
we're
were you
not
gonna
too
say?
boring. We're not
No,
too
we're
boring.
not at all. And I don't think people We'll disagree. I think,
Great stuff coming up, though. Great
yeah,
stuff
huge.
coming up.
Yeah, I think
So,
so.
folks, just bear with us. It's going to get better each week. Trust me.
Mhm.
And by the end of this, I'm thinking in I don't know, handful of weeks from now,
Yeah,
we're going to have you, not you, Ted, but you
the,
listeners,
yep,
writing. You're going to be writing.
yep,
You're going to be moving forward with that idea that you have been sitting on all of this time, that you've been hoping someone else would write because, quite frankly, you don't think you can do it, but you can.
hmm,
And we're going to help you at least get that
yep.
first draft done.
Get you on that journey. Absolutely. I thank everybody for stopping in, seeing both of us, and listening to us talk for a couple minutes. And yeah, I can't wait for the next episode. It's going to be really informative, a lot of fun. Thanks for taking time, man. I appreciate this. This is great. And do a lot of good things for people here. So,
Peace
good
out,
deal.
baby. We'll see ya.
We'll talk to you soon, guys. Have a good week. Be safe. Do something good for somebody. We'll talk to you later.
Northern Grounds Coffee. Fresh, artisan roasted, small batch coffee with pop culture flair. The finest organic suspension ever devised.